Good afternoon and welcome to the CAMCO What's New in GibbsCAM 2022. GibbsCAM 2022 is here and it has many new features that will help you, the programmer. This webinar is being recorded. You will receive a link to replay via email, and it will also be on our YouTube page. We'll cover the YouTube page and other support items towards the end of the webinar. In this webinar, we are going to highlight many of the new enhancements inside of GibbsCAM 2022. We have 11 part files for you. Each part file shows one new enhancement of GibbsCAM. Some enhancements are Toolpath related, and some enhancements are product functionality related. While the webinar is going on, please write down your questions and hold on to them, or you can put them in the question box at the bottom of your GoToWebinar control panel. At the end of the webinar, in about 35 or 40 minutes, we will stop and have a Q&A period. Let's get right into the first part file for GibbsCAM version 2022. If you want to know what version you're running, go to Help, About GibbsCAM, and it will tell you which version you have currently installed. At the end of the webinar, we will show you where to go to download the most current version of GibbsCAM. I'm checking my audio gear and video gear, making sure everything is okay, and it looks like we are set to go. In our first product enhancement, we have a new feature called Align to Edge. Whenever you import whenever you import a solid from a CAD system, there's no telling where it will be when it comes into GibbsCAM, because it might have been taken out of an assembly, and wherever it was in that assembly, that's where it will live when it comes into GibbsCAM. Fortunately, we have many tools to help you straighten that model up to get it in position for machining quickly. The first of which is Align Face to CS. You simply click on a face, right-click, and select Align Face to CS. The face will align to the coordinate system, although in this case, it's upside down and it's a little crooked. That's okay. Click the same surface again, right-click, Align Face to CS, and the part will flip over. The next item is that we need to align this part to the x-axis using this edge of the part right here. We now have a feature called Align to Edge. Turn on Edge Selection here in the floating toolbar. Select the edge of the part that you want to align to the horizontal axis. Remember, CNC machines are horizontal, vertical, and the depth axis. The depth axis is shown by the plus sign, and in milling, the tool always points towards the depth axis or the plus sign. Now we have selected the edge that we want to align to the horizontal axis. We simply right-click, and now we have a new feature called Align Edge to Coordinate System Horizontal. The part is now ready for machining. We may want to change the 0 point or flip it over, but you now know how to quickly whip a model into shape when it comes into GibbsCAM using face selection, edge selection, and the two selections called Align Face to CS or Align Edge to CS Horizontal. Let's move on to the next part file. Part file number 2 actually has to do with toolpaths. And this is going to be split into two pieces, this part file. One of the most popular enhancements to GibbsCAM in the last 2 to 3 years was the deburring option inside of the 5-axis module. This is the 5-axis module, and don't let that fool you. This is a complete machining engine all of its own. It does 3-axis surfacing, 4-axis surfacing, 5-axis surfacing. It also does 4-axis rotary mill and 5-axis rotary mill. And in this case, we have a new enhancement that showed up a couple of years ago, about calculation based on deburring. We can now take a lollipop tool, or you'll see now a ball end mill or a flat end mill, and we can deburr sharp edges on the part simply by selecting the part surfaces that we want to work on, and that would be this one. We could select all of them if we like. And then we select user defined edges, which would be that one, with edge selection turned on, of course. And then we select edge shape. We either have constant width or constant depth. We set the width, and now not only can we deburr this in multiple steps along that shape, we can deburr it now not only with a lollipop tool, but with a ball end mill and a flat end mill. Let's have a look at the first toolpath that we have here. And let's look at toolpath 1. We're going to use skip unselected ops and just run toolpath number 1. We're running this in 3-axis mode because, again, the 5-axis module works on 3, 4, and 5-axis machines. As you can see on this toolpath, on the Surface Paths tab, we had selected 8 cuts along the edge, and the edge break was 80 thousandths, and we did select flat. So what we have is we have a chamfer put where a sharp edge previously was. Let's look at the second toolpath and see the second enhancement that we had to the deburring. In the deburring, we not only have flat, but we also have rounded. And again, you can select the number of cuts along that edge and the depth of the cut along that edge. Let's go back to OpSim and have a look at op number 2, again, using the button called skip unselected ops. And here we're taking, in a 3-axis machine, we're taking a ball end mill and cutting a round on a surface. We did that with 8 passes. The second portion of this deburring multiple cuts has to do with using a flat end mill. Here we have another toolpath, and instead of using number 1, we could have used a lollipop. Number 2, we can now use a ball end mill. And number 3, we can now use a flat end mill. The flat end mill can be steered towards the edge, again using the 5-axis module. Under Surface Paths, there is something new. It understands that we are using a flat end mill to cut this surface. We're going to trim the corner because, as you can see, flat is now grayed out. There is no more round. So this flat end mill can be used to cut a flat deburr on this edge. Let me slow this down a little bit, and here we go. Now we have the end mill, and you can see the lead in, the lead out right there, and we just cut this in a single pass. We can do multiple passes with this. This is, again, part of the new deburring function in the 5-axis module, where we can now use ball end mill and flat end mill to cut both rounds and chamfers. Moving on to the next part, part number 3, extrude surface. We can take geometry now, and on the surface modeling tab, and again, this is old school sheet modeling, there is a new button there called extrude. We can now take and extrude a shape into a group of sheets. And where this is useful is when we are running the new OptiCAM wire EDM. Now, when you extrude a sheet in wire EDM, this sheet circle can be used for a lead-in for your wire in wire cutting EDM, I beg your pardon. Again, we have 2D geometry, surface CAD, and full 3D CAD. Let's move on to the next item, which is going to be a Toolpath item. It's number 4, instant start at operation. This one will take just a little bit to load because it has a lot of information in it. Here we have a part, and we are in a machine that is going to be a twin spindle, twin turret lathe. It's the AMCO Hyperturn 45. And normally what you see at the beginning of the program is 2 pieces of stock. Well, we have a pretty long program here, and we want to start at op 16. Of course, we have the option of skipping unselected ops, but it doesn't show the true material condition or the condition of the machine or the turrets at the beginning of op 16. Now, in GibbsCAM version 2022, when we go into Machine Sim or Op Sim, and you go to the Stops button, we now can start at operation, and we've had that capability for quite a while, but not for MTM and not for instantaneous generation of the stock. When we select Op 16 and click OK and close the stops, as soon as we regen, you will see that the part has been rewound to the exact beginning of op 16, and we can simply take off from there. And if we turn on transparent stock, we can see inside of the stock to the part. So as you can see, each time we rewind back to the beginning, it rewinds to op 16, and you see the completed part in the main spindle, and the part here has been cut and is ready to go in the sub spindle. This is different because before in GibbsCAM, you had to wait. Whenever you selected a start at operation, it said generating initial stock. Now in GibbsCAM, the generation of initial stock is instantaneous. And again, this is under stops, start at operation. And you can simply select the operation from the pull down list. We'll change it to start at op 5, rewind, and now the machine is ready at the beginning of op 5. This is a tremendous time saver when you're programming long and very complex parts with lots of machining operations. Start at operation. There are also stop at part load unload, stop before operation, or stop before every tool. That was part number 4. Let's move on to part number 5 and see what we have. Number 5 is move start endpoint. In GibbsCAM, we've always had the ability to move the exact start and end point of a toolpath. Let's create a new toolpath with this 25mm end mill, and it's just going to be a simple contour where the top of the part is here. Sorry, the top of the part is here. The bottom of the part is, of course, 0. Now, how did we get that dimension in this dialog box? You double click, press your Alt key, and click on the surface that you want, and you can see the numbers directly from the model go directly into the dialog box. So we will make the clearance to 180mm. We'll start cutting at 177 and finish cutting at 0. Let's turn on the profiler, drag the profiler up into the part so that we can clearly see the geometry that we want to cut. And if we click do it right now, we get a toolpath all the way around the outside of the part. In GibbsCAM, we don't have to draw additional geometry to cut other portions of the part. Let's say we wanted to go only halfway around the part, or in this case, 3/4 of the way around the part. We position the start marker here, the end marker here, and click redo. And you can see that the toolpath now goes 3/4 of the way around the part. We want to go just along this line, and the markers will snap to the beginning and the end of each geometry element. Then we right-click and select Single Feature Cut. The purple proposed toolpath now shows us that when we press the redo button, that we're just cutting the front edge of the part. And if we go to OpSim and select next feature, which is our way of saying single block, you can see that I would like to be a little bit farther away from the part before we start the toolpath. And the way that we do that in GibbsCAM is with the machining markers in place, you now have the ability to right click, and where before it said move start point or move endpoint, we now have this dialog box, which lets us move each one independently. And since this is a 25 millimeter end mill, I'm going to move the start point 12 millimeters off the part, which is roughly half of the cutter, and another 12 millimeters off the part in that direction, and press redo. You've always had the ability to position the start and end point to an exact position, but now it is interactive inside of this menu, both start and end point together. And we also get to see where the absolute numbers are. We used a relative number, move it 12 millimeters from here. That was from the end of that connector there on the part. We now have the ability to do it interactively, and it updates without you having to push the do it button. Part number 5 was about toolpath enhancement. Let's go look at part number 6 and look at multi-configuration. This doesn't take but a few seconds to load. Many of you have machines now that have multiple configurations on them. This is a Kitamura HX400i, and it is fitted with a very unique 4th and 5th axis device on it. The 4th axis, the B, is built into the machine, but the 5th axis is a bolt-on tombstone. And this tombstone has 4 separate rotary axes on it, and each one can be commanded by an M code, C101, C102 or C2, C3, and C4. You can see that they're both clearly marked here on the workpiece, as are the rotary axis positions, so that when you're programming, you'll know which side of the tombstone that you're on. Well, let's say Monday and Tuesday of this week, you want to run this machine with the 5th axis bolted onto the machine, but on Wednesday and Thursday, you want to go back and run this in 4-axis mode. You no longer need to have a separate MDD. This is called the MDD, the Machine Definition Dialog. Normally in GibbsCAM, previous to now, you would select Kitamura 4-axis or Kitamura 5-axis, and you would have to have a separate post processor for each as well, and a separate machine sim model for each as well. But now in GibbsCAM version 2022, your GibbsCAM reseller can configure your multi-axis machines to run either in mode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as many modes as your machine has. Here you can see we're in mode 2, the 4 parts KME TS400 tombstone. Let's go back to standard horizontal mill. It does a quick regen. We're still in the same part file. We go back to machine sim, and now we are back to the 4-axis horizontal. Now, simply by clicking a button on the MDD under document control, we can change the configuration on your machine. This is especially useful on your Swiss machines where you have multiple tool attachments that bolt onto the machine depending on what type of part you're cutting that day. Multiple configuration. Talk to your GibbsCAM distributor about your machine simulation and multiple configurations. Part number 6 was about an enhancement to the product. where part number 7 is also going to be an enhancement to the product. It is not Toolpath related. In the extrude function of solid modeling, previous to now, when you went to perform an extrude and taper, you were only able to extrude in one direction. We're going to turn taper off for just a minute and change this to -0.5 and -1, and you'll see some other enhancements in the extrude. We now can do multiple extrude. We're going to click the outside of the part, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes in the part, and click do it. And all of those extrusions now happen at one time. In previous versions of GibbsCAM, when doing a Boolean extrusion, you only had the option of extruding one item at a time. Let's delete that part and turn on the taper and double click the outside of the part. And you now have the option where you can perform a taper at 2 different levels. Before, you only started with the geometry at the top level and were able to extrude down. Now I can extrude from -0.5 to -1, and I can extrude with a taper. This was 2 new enhancements to the extrude command in GibbsCAM. The first of which was multiple extrude, and the second was taper extrude with 2 separate Z vectors. Let's move to the next part, part number 8. In part number 8, when you are machining pockets or deep features, it's many times very beneficial for you to pre-drill a hole somewhere in that pocket before you jam an end mill in there and beat the corners of the end mill up. In GibbsCAM version 2022, you can see here we have just a simple block, but it has 8 separate pockets in it. Our cutter is 3/16 in diameter, and our drill is 3/16 in diameter. And the way that we work this is we create a combined operation. First, we create a drill op, and in that drill op, we set it up just like we normally do, but except we go to pre-mill and select entry. Let's look at the help balloons entry on this. It says select this option to generate a toolpath that pre-drills an entry hole used by the following mill tool when entering the material contour and or roughing process. We just created a drilling process here ahead of this process, which was a contour process, stepping down in the pocket. Let's throw these away and simply click on the part and do it. With use stock and material only, GibbsCAM recognized each pocket. It drilled a hole somewhere in each pocket of its choosing. We all know that we can choose our own pocket by using auto plunge, or not auto plunge, but user plunge. But here, GibbsCAM uses auto plunge and finds a good place to start in the pocket so that the end mill can follow it without banging up the corners. Let's slow this down a little bit and watch this toolpath run a little bit. That was a little fast. Let's go a little bit slower and hit the rewind button. Here come all of the drilling ops at one time, and then each pocket will happen right after. And as you can see, each pocket plunges directly into the middle of the drilled hole before it starts machining. This works with 2D geometry, and it also works with 3D solid models. This 3D solid model is also being shown in transparent stock mode. When you set your stock to transparent, see it before you machine it takes on a whole new meaning. We get to look directly at our part and see what's going on while we are cutting it. giving us an extra measure of safety when we are creating our toolpaths. We want to see when we generate a toolpath that we did the right thing. And GibbsCAM will tell us if we did the right thing or if we did the wrong thing. Again, this is transparent stock. How does transparent stock work? Notice if I do not highlight the part and go into OpSim, transparent stock doesn't show us anything of any tremendous value. Before you go into OpSim, simply select your solid model. And then when you go into OpSim, you will see it inside of the transparent stock. Again, see it before you machine it. We've had this capability for quite some time, but we just took this opportunity to cover it since we get a lot of questions about stock transparency. This particular module, number 8, was about automatic pre-drilling when contouring or roughing. Moving on to part number 10. One of the exciting things about GibbsCAM is that in the field of high-speed machining, we can be considered very privileged because we have VoluMill trademarked directly into our GibbsCAM. VoluMill is not a high-speed machining substitution. It is a tier 1 high-speed machining product that will help you cut hard and soft materials with better tool life, better cycle time, and less part distortion. The VoluMill Toolpath, if you haven't seen it, cuts using a circular motion similar to what we used to do in trochoidal milling. Let's have a look at this in OpSim and watch it rough this part out. It does a ramp in, and then it cuts the part out from the inside out using the VoluMill style toolpath. The VoluMill style toolpath uses a specific cut width, a specific RPM and feed rate, and a step over. The step over is one of 3 numbers: 40% for soft materials, 12% for normal alloy steels, and for high alloy steels and aerospace materials, 6% step over. This feed and speed calculator inside of GibbsCAM is the VoluMill feed and speed calculator and is one of the best feed and speed calculators in the world right now. Again, you can cut your parts faster with 4 times less tool wear, and it's much easier on your machine. The next thing that we want to talk about in the VoluMill box is we now have a start side suggestion. If we go to OpSim, rewind, and single block, you'll see that we're starting on the Y minus side of the part, and we ramp towards the Y plus. We now have a start side suggestion. Let's change this to Y plus, redo the operation, and yes, that is correct. You do not need to leave the operation to redo it. And if we single block here, we start on the Y plus side and machine towards the other side. Now let's go to X minus and redo, and you'll see that the start point is on the opposite side of the part. You now have start point suggestion in the box, as well as a custom box. You can set an angle using the clock 0, 90, 180, 225, 235, and redo, and you'll see that it will enter from the 235 degree side of the pocket. So this is called start side suggestion for VoluMill cutting, whether you're on the inside of a pocket or on the outside of a part. VoluMill can be used for pocketing and also for boss machining. That was part file number 10. Let's go find part file number 11. And this is a product enhancement, not a toolpath enhancement as we just saw. and this is our TMS Multipart Button. When we go into Machine Sim, we have a new button if you are using Tombstone Management System, or if you are using the standard multi-part duplication. This new button allows you to quickly go from multi-part to single part view simply by clicking this button. It doesn't change the post output, but it does set us up where we can watch the first part, or we can watch all of the parts. We can see all of the parts being machined simply by clicking this button called Show Multipart. This is a tremendous benefit for us as programmers because in TMS, you only have to program one part in each rotation. This is side A, this is side B. We only have to program one side A and one side B. In Tombstone Management System, we get to set up the TMS to X at 2, a distance of 211, Y at 5, distance of 150, B of 2 sides, step is 180 degrees, and clear all and regroup. And we do get control over our retracts on the same B, on the new B, and also on new coordinate systems. Also on workspace, we have our master clearance plane, and the master clearance plane works depending on how you have your post set up, either from the center of the rotary table or from your C-style coordinate systems output. Again, this is multi-part display, either off or on, now with the click of a button. Before, we had to go to TMS Multipart and set it to either single part or none. We can now quickly change between single and multi-part with the click of one button. Part file number 12, Multiaxis Milling. The Multiaxis Milling is an enhancement to the 5-axis package. And in the 5-axis package, we have a multi-axis milling that was meant for the Mazak Integrex Akuma Multis type of market, where we have a milling machine that's welded to a lathe. It no longer looks like a lathe. It looks like both machines put together. And here we have a very complex auger. In this case, it is a single helix auger, but you can do multiple helix augers and multiple lead augers. And under surface paths, it's called rotary machining. And it now does full roughing of a rotary part like this in a rotary style machine, which could either be, again, an Integrex or a Multis, or it could be a vertical machining center with a 4th axis. Let's select the part and go into Machine Sim, and you will see the part is hanging out in the air, which is okay. We want it to look better than that though. Let's have a quick look at the multi-axis roughing. And then we're going to switch to make the stock so that it is fully up inside of the chuck. In the multi-axis roughing, you must have a part and a stock body. The part body is here and the stock body is here. The stock body must match exactly what material is on the part, because this part and stock definition is part of this toolpath, and GibbsCAM uses this body to generate the toolpath. For demonstration purposes, let's change this. Now that we have the toolpath done, let's change this to part and change this to stock. And now when we make a movie of this and send it down to the floor so that the operator can see what this looks like on his machine, he will be assured that the part is up inside the chuck. and he will be able to see each move of his multi-axis roughing. Let's just watch a little bit of this ASMR multi-axis roughing toolpath. Again, it is quite mesmerizing to watch this go here in the simulation. It's even more interesting when you watch it actually happen on the part. It's very thrilling to see what GibbsCAM can do in the field on these new complex machines. And the new machines have dynamic work offsets. They have tool center point control programming, which means that no matter where you bend the B axis or the rotary axis on the machine, the tooltip still knows where the part is. This is something that we've been wanting for a very, very long time, and it is now becoming commonplace among standard machine tool builders around the world. Of course, this is a Mazak Integrex. I believe this is a 300S twin spindle single turret with steady and follower rest on it. Again, let's have a quick look at this toolpath. We can do multiple depths, and we can also do multiple stepovers inside of that 5-axis toolpath. Here you can see we have selected two depths, and we select those depths here under surface paths, and your stepover and your depth are both controlled here in depth steps and stepover. And of course, your part is defined here, the part surfaces and the stock definition on the part definition page. We have been through all 12 of the part files showing 12 new enhancements to GibbsCAM. And these enhancements are made to help you, the programmer, have an easier day. Some are toolpath enhancements, and some are product enhancements. Let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation, and let's see if we have any questions in the Q&A box. And it looks like there are no questions in the Q&A box, so we will move on to the next slide in the presentation. And we're going to switch over to another screen and talk about one or two more items. If you need information about GibbsCAM 2022 or for any of your GibbsCAM needs, contact Beth Urbans. Or for technical support, contact Camco support at these numbers. We're going to change screens for just a moment because we have our website up on the second screen, because we want to show you where you can go to get help from Camco. Camco, we are your dedicated Northeast GibbsCAM reseller, and we are fully staffed to help you with product, sales, and support. Here on our home page, which is camco-ne.com, you will find a tremendous amount of information to help you as the programmer or you as the machine shop owner. Under support, you may click support and click this number, and you will go directly to our support agent's telephone number. You may also click this link, and it will send you again directly to this page. You will create an email and click go. And when that email is complete, it will create a ticket in our ticketing system, and everyone in our company will see that you opened a ticket and someone will contact you very soon. If you need your post processor modified, you may come here to the post processor section of support at camco-ne.com and click on the post modification button. Here you will find instructions on how to have your post processor modified, including clicking here to watch the video tutorial on our YouTube page, our Camco-ne YouTube page. We hope that you enjoyed today's presentation of GibbsCAM 2022. Again, If you have any questions, please contact your local GibbsCAM reseller, which is Camco, at either one of these numbers for sales and accounts, or this number for support. Again, thank you for attending this webinar. Again, this has been recorded and it will show up on our YouTube website. Thank you again.